All right, great. So we're here for the last session of the day, and this is a keynote. I'm really delighted to be able to introduce two of my colleagues from MIT Open Learning. Bill Bonvillian is a lecturer at MIT, Senior Director of Special Projects in the Office of Open Learning. He's an expert in workforce training policy for manufacturing and other sectors, and he's played an integral role in that benchmarking effort that I was talking about on the MassBridge effort. Sanjay Sarma is the Flowers Professor of Mechanical Engineering at MIT, and he's the VP for Open Learning for the Institute. He helped to launch all of our open learning activities, including OpenCourseWare and edX and others, that provide free online learning opportunities for millions of people globally. He continues to lead our efforts for the future of education at MIT and the world. They will share their learning from a new and, I must say, excellent book called Workforce Education, A New Roadmap. Take it away.
Sanjay, you're up.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, George. Sorry, I had my video off there, but just to kick things off, if we go to the next slide, Bill. So we started this effort out of a study that Bill and I conducted with funding from the Schmidt Futures Foundation. And the basic observation was that the median age of MIT X students is 27, which is a working age. And we were trying to figure out what are the gaps in workforce education, what are its new models, what are its strengths, what are its weaknesses, so that MIT could produce content to meet those needs. And that turned into a report. The final report turned to a book. And this is the book that George kindly referred to. Next slide, Bill. So the coronavirus has changed workforce education or made it even more urgent as an issue. Unemployment in April was 10 million, but it's really the highest labor non-participation rates that are driving many concerns amongst labor economists and the government. Next slide.
And many sectors, because of COVID, are facing really significant damage: in-person retail, restaurants, hospitality, transportation, travel, tourism. Many are going to have to shift job sectors. But one of the most interesting and problematic impacts is that we've relied on these lower end services sectors to absorb a lot of jobs. And those are being cut back. So the higher skilled jobs are going to come to the forefront.
I'm sorry. Yep. So if you look at the situation today post-COVID, it's sort of like after World War II. After World War II, 16 million soldiers came back and sailors, and they had to be reskilled. The United States created what is now referred to as the GI Bill. And the question is, do we have the same level of urgency? We would argue yes. Do we need the same level of effort? We would argue yes. Next slide.
So, and that's a big challenge in the area of workforce education, because we've got a fairly broken system in the US. We've got a series of kind of areas of problems. We've got disconnects in the US between work and learning. We've got labor and education department programs that are not connected. We've got universities and community colleges that are not connected with each other and offering programs in most areas. We've also got some disinvestment and real underfunding. So there's been disinvestment by both government and many employers, underfunding at community colleges and other key institutions. We've got some real assets. We have advanced technical education at NSF. We've got the Manufacturing Innovation Institutes. We're going to hear from both these programs. We've heard from the MII program today, from Michael Britt-Crane. We're going to hear from Celeste Carter at the ATE program at NSF. So those are assets, but those are not strongly funded. We've got struggling institutions. So community colleges, as I noted, are underfunded, but they've also got low completion rates. And we've got a problem in the US in secondary schools where we dismantled much of our vocational high school system across the country. Some states kept theirs. Massachusetts has a particularly strong program, and some other states do as well, but that's a real gap in the system. So we've got some broken elements too. We've got a broken labor market information chain, which is really missing some components. It's really not a system. We don't really do lifelong education. So those are all gaps. And it's not just coronavirus, it's longstanding job quality problems. So our colleague at MIT, an economist named David Otter, portrays this picture of what we got in the United States. We've got increasing inequality, not economic convergence. We've got a growing upper middle class. We've had a declining middle class in that bar across. That's a thinning out bar, and then a growing lower end services sector. And technological advances, particularly in information technologies, are putting many quality jobs out of reach for those workers who don't get the training and skills in those areas. And then, as I said before, post-COVID, Labor Department data tells us that the lower end services jobs are now in decline in that part of the barbell. So the jobs that are going to be opening are going to require more skills. So we looked at workforce needs in 3 large sectors, which are total 30% of US employment. In manufacturing, this had been a middle-class pathway particularly for men without college, but medium income for men without high school diplomas or with high school diplomas in some colleges now down significantly in the US. Manufacturing employment fell by 1/3 between 2000 and 2010, even though that had been a critical gateway into the middle class for a very long time for a lot of people. Sanjay noted that we've got a very high labor non-participation rate. Coronavirus hit some sectors, but overall, manufacturing proved pretty resilient. So that's a sector where the aging demographics and retirements in manufacturing are going to lead to probably well over 2 million manufacturing jobs opening up this coming decade. And yet we're moving to advanced manufacturing, which is going to require higher skills. How are we going to get there?
Retail is an industry that's actually been in America in the throes of change for 15 years. By 2005, the United States had already overbilled retail 6 times more per capita than the rest of the world, twice, even 1.5 times more than even Canada. And remember, Canada is a cold country full, and they need a lot of malls for people to aggregate. And we're twice as much as Canada. 2008, it was teetering on the brink, and the crash led to what is called the first retail apocalypse. And so the retail industry went down the route of dumbing down labor and turning them into essentially product shifters like robots. 2015, meanwhile, of course, Amazon had been founded in the 1990s, and it started taking off. By 2015, online was everywhere, and more jobs started shifting from the storefront to the warehouse. That's also a gender shift, because storefront jobs tend to be more female, and warehouse jobs tend to be more male. But of course, warehousing is also more eminently automatable. As you know, a local company was acquired by Amazon for $800 million. So that's because they made retail robots. But then 2020, coronavirus strikes, and retail is in trouble. What's the new model? The new model is all sorts of new stuff: omni-channeling, pick up at store, buy at store, pick up at store, buy at store, deliver home, buy online, pick up at store, all sorts of things. More IT, more technology. And so there's a huge opportunity for upskilling managers and also staff in this new world. Bill?
Our third case study that we looked at in depth was in healthcare, and all of us know this story. We've got an aging population. We've got higher healthcare demands. We've got new medical technologies that are creating whole new professional opportunities. So more jobs, many requiring higher skills, so new training systems, and yet there are barriers to entry here from the existing health professions. So could, for example, online help in this area? Between high school and undergraduate, there's really kind of a gap in our system. Jobs are increasingly going to the college educated, but growing information technologies are demanding new skills. So new higher middle skill jobs are going to require education beyond high school. But as this room knows, only 1/3 of Americans over age 25 have 4-year college degrees. So we're going to really need a new, rejuvenated, enhanced system for workforce education, a new credentialing system to go along with it. So where do we need attention? We've got a weak labor market information system. Workers don't know what skills they need. Educators don't know what skills they need to educate for. Employers often don't know what skills the workers that are coming to them have. We've got a real problem with the transition from school to work. There's a real gap between the two in our country. Other countries don't have that. Countries like Germany, Austria, Switzerland have remarkable apprenticeship programs. We historically have not had those outside the construction trades. The high school diploma is increasingly not enough, but again, we ended much of our vocational high school system, and our community colleges are underfunded. Their completion rates are often too low. Colleges and universities are simply not engaged, right? They don't think it's their problem. And we don't have transferable skill certification systems in most fields. And the education and labor department programs are not aligned. Labor department programs focused on the unemployed and underemployed, but don't really focus on upskilling. They don't focus really on incumbent workers or new entrants. The education programs are really degree programs, right? They're not particularly focused effectively on workforce education.
So the interesting thing here is that COVID has reminded us of online education. Online education has really come of age. The question is, could it be the foundation for a new workforce education system? Next slide, Bill. And the technologies of learning are getting better and better. Online, we think of online as taking courses on Zoom, but actually I'll come back to that. That's not the best of online. Proper online is asynchronous video, but then that's just the beginning. Then you have augmented reality, virtual reality, computer gaming and simulation, AI-based education. The stuff that's happening with natural language processing is quite amazing. Natural language NLP processing is really quite amazing. Digital tutors. We at MIT are working on a blockchain-based accreditation system, verification system for certificates. So the idea is you get a certificate put on your LinkedIn page, and you can click on it, an employer can click on it and see if it's valid. In-person boot camp. So all these modalities are emerging. Next slide, Bill. So COVID has boosted online education. Colleges and universities would not have survived without it. We all basically hung by a thread, a digital thread called Zoom. But Zoom, as I said, is not true online. Zoom is, in fact, the worst of both worlds. We shouldn't be lecturing in the classroom to begin with because it's so passive. We should be using new techniques, blended learning, flipped classroom, etc. And if we do online is asynchronous video. So Zoom is the worst classroom lecture done without the saving grace of in-person, the charm of being in person. Proper online, done properly with cognitive science principles, can absolutely transform the reach and efficacy of teaching. And in the classroom, it helps flip it, making the classroom more worth the while. So these are some of the new pedagogies that are and will emerge. Next slide. And EdTech takes it a whole level higher. EdTech is using technology to improve learning. It's done right. It's technology and cognitive science. Our regular lectures in the classroom are what? 45 minutes, 90 minutes, 1 hour. It turns out that our brain can only pay attention for 10 minutes. Online videos, if you go to watch an online video, they tend to be short. Khan Academy videos are short because they're actually more cognitively friendly. They figured it out. There are all sorts of cognitive tricks, generative learning, tactile learning, blended learning, augmented reality, virtual reality. All these things help learn better, and they can be done better online, or online can be used to make the classroom better. And so anyway, there's a whole bunch of new technologies based on cognitive science that we can deploy to really affect a very significant change in the efficacy of learning. And the first place this might make a material impact in, and it already is workforce education. Next slide, Bill. And as I said earlier, this is just the beginning. AR, VR, digital tutors, artificial intelligence, personalized learning, all these things are coming down the pike. And when you are in person, finally, when you have the privilege of being in person, right? Let's hope we make it count by doing hands-on projects, making, troubleshooting, critical thinking, coaching, getting continuous assessment from an expert. So we've got to rethink the classroom experience when we pull it out of the vice-like grip of this pandemic that doesn't go away. Next slide, Bill. And the thing here is that the social contract of universities has to change. I mean, universities have to figure out what they're good at and what they're not so good at. You know, take MIT, and every university is going to be different. Are we good at organizing delivery framework? Yep, we've done a good job with edX, and you know what Bill and George are doing with the AIM photonics. I mean, this is amazing. We're good at that. Okay, online platforms and technologies, we're good at that. I sit on the board of edX. Open edX is used around the world now. We do that well. Actual delivery, technician level, will we be able to teach, I don't know, welding? You know, MIT professors, you know, I actually enjoy welding, but we can probably teach the physics of welding, but welding is in person, or it can be done in a community college or a VOTEC school. So we've got to figure out what we're good at and what we're not, and interdigitate with partners, and as a whole, deliver on a new social contract that provides a holistic education to people who need them in the workforce. Bill?
So what are some of the policy implications here? We're going to need these new education technologies that Sanjay has been talking about, and that we talked about earlier in today. We're going to need short courses that are geared towards students that are in the workforce and have time restraints, family restraints. But we need to connect those to certificates and degrees so they can keep continuing and building their education backgrounds. We're going to need programs that reach, you know, trifecta programs that reach incumbent workers at workplaces, high school students, as well as community college students. Community colleges can be offering platforms for all three kinds of approaches. We're going to need to break down that work-learn barrier. We're going to need more apprenticeships, or what we could call apprenticeship light. And we're seeing interesting successes in youth apprenticeships that start in the second year of high school and start to bring students into a combination program of high school, community college, and working in the course of a day. We're going to need to turn around the community college completion rate, and we're starting to see some interesting approaches. For example, at Tennessee's TCATS program have really created remarkable completion rates in technical education. We're going to need more technical and comprehensive high schools that break down that work-learn barrier. There's going to be a critical role for expanded employer involvement. We're going to need new curriculum for new fields. Advanced manufacturing, which we've talked a good bit about today. It's a whole new suite of advanced manufacturing technologies entering the workforce. We don't have curricula to go with them. That's going to have to get developed and internalized into the institutions and training providers. We're going to need unifying efforts at the state level. We talked today about the Massachusetts Skills Cabinet, but bringing the programs at different departments together across the state with industry is going to be crucial. Partnerships are going to be key. And we're going to need a new labor market information system. So let's do that trifecta, create programs at community colleges that bring together incumbent workers at work sites, high school and community college students in kind of together programs. A number of the institutions that we're talking today are doing these kinds of things. Let's do more youth apprenticeships and apprenticeship light programs to break down the work-learn barrier. Let's turn around the completion rate and improve community college funding. Let's do short programs, but still connect them to degrees. We're going to need regional workforce efforts by groups of employers with states and community college and other institutions. We're going to need to integrate federal programs at the state level and regional level. We're going to need new labor market information systems, and we're going to need the new education technologies that Sanjay was talking about earlier. Thank you. We've now got time for some Q&A.
So fantastic. You know, this is such amazing work. It's you know, as I've been doing my work in workforce learning, I'm learning so much from you, Bill and Sanjay, about what you've been doing, and hopefully sharing a little bit back too. It's also great to hear that the recommendations you've been talking about, some of them have already been picked up by people today in pieces. It's part of this conversation, and that's great to hear. So anybody, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A, and we'll make sure we ask them. If I can just add a couple here. One is that you've talked about these new elements that we need and the smaller pieces and connected differently and the certifications to run around them and all of these things. One of the ideas of digital is you have the long tail effect. So no matter where you specialize, you can find a big market at a global basis. Any person can find what they need. Where are you seeing this happen in your case? Are you seeing great collaborations across schools or across employers to really solve problems for the world?
Bill, you want to take that?
Yeah. George, I think that mix is critical. Something for employers to keep in mind. If you have a training program with mid-sized employers, smaller employers, they take on a training program and it's got duration problems. It may not last, right? It'll hit the first economic downturn, it'll end. It'll hit, an employer will solve the immediate job programs, it'll end. Collaborations across employers tend to be more durable and lasting. Different companies are in different statuses. Some will have employment needs, others won't. So sharing programs tend to make for more durable, sustainable kind of programs. And it also provides, a mix of training opportunities to employees. So the combination of bringing in groups of employers with shared programs where they cooperate with community colleges, or in some cases, obviously, secondary schools, that's where we need to move. We need to get these partnerships together so that the different actors can be involved with each other, helping to solve each other's problems, helping to fill in each other's gaps. The employers really help design relevant programs for actual workforce needs they build alliances with community colleges. That tends to create much better flow of job openings and opportunities into those employers. The collaboration is really key, and that's the kind of system we need to start up.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. I think I have just agreed with Bill. I completely agree.
Cool, great. So there's a question about internships, apprenticeships, this kind of thing. So if I can put two questions together, what's the distinction between internships in nonprofit and apprenticeships? Sorry, what's the distinction between internships and apprenticeships? And if I could add that, what are Germany, Austria, and Switzerland doing right that the US might not be doing right now?
Oh my God, that's a one-day answer, but I'll make it summary. I'll answer it quickly. The difference between an internship and an apprenticeship is that an internship, you go and do it and you put in your resume, but an apprenticeship, you actually get a certificate if it's done right. So you could get an apprenticeship, for example, you could do an apprenticeship at Daimler in Germany, and you get a certificate, and BMW will hire you with that certificate. So it truly is teaching with certification. We tend to be in this country generally a lot more, frankly, selfish, because we're training for my job. Why should I train you for someone else? And the problem is the tide doesn't lift all boats, and we get caught in that tragedy of the commons there. So Bill and I have discussed this a lot, and maybe Bill, you can give some examples of how it's worked in the United States. And to his earlier point, it works when there are collaborations. Bill?
Sure, Sanjay. And we've seen some interesting programs. Apprenticeships are not pervasive in the United States, to say the least. They are in construction trades, but that's kind of it. There's been a lot of attention in the last couple of administrations and in this one to kind of renew apprenticeship programs, because that work-learn barrier, in other words, the gap between our education institutions and getting a job and setting up a career, that's a profound gap. Bunch of European countries, as Sanjay suggested, have really connected that using apprenticeship programs that are both work and learn combination. And that's the secret. And an interesting program we've seen is in South Carolina. South Carolina has a statewide apprenticeship program run with employers through its community college system. And then lately, in the last few years, Charleston, South Carolina, led by a group of smaller manufacturing employers working with the area community college, Trident Tech. They've created a very interesting apprenticeship program, registered apprenticeship program with the Department of Labor. It starts in the junior year of high school. Students in their junior year, they spend their mornings at high school, and by the way, their employers tell them they got to take some math and science. Then they go to, in midday, they'll go to Trident Tech Community College and take technical courses relevant to the skills they need on their new jobs. And in the later part of the afternoon, they are at a company holding down real jobs and earning, for high school, very significant amounts of money. They're kind of king of the hill in high school. But most important of all, it takes those high school students, and we all know kind of how disruptive and sometimes self-destructive high school can be. It takes them out of that environment and puts them into much more mature environments. So they're out of high school by noontime into a community college setting where they're college students, and the average age there is 29. And then they're at a workplace where the average age is in the 30s to 40s, right? So they're in much more mature environments and start reflecting the outlooks of their colleagues in those older environments. And it leads to a tremendous amount of emotional maturity for those students, as well as good paying jobs. And they complete a year of community college by the time they finish high school. And then the employer will typically pick up that second year of community college when they come to work for them. And there's a very high percentage that take those job opportunities. So it really tends to create a career pathway for these students who don't get into a lot of student debt in the process.
Great, thank you. It's such a great model to see and to learn from. It'd be nice if other states could pick up those kinds of ideas. Maybe a few can that are in this group now. So another question, you had mentioned the labor management information systems, right? There's, Burning Glass, there's BLS data, there are all these different things. Can you say a little bit more about how that process needs to improve?
Look, I mean, right now people are navigating their careers with, it's like, who would start a drive from Boston to New York or not look at Waze and a weather report, right? But yet we educate sort of blind, I mean, students pick majors and frankly, the faculty and the students are sometimes disconnected from the labor market. I'm not suggesting education should be entirely that. Education needs to be broad-minded, and we need to look at things from a different perspectives, but certainly employability should not be ignored. So we have written about it, that there is a lot of opportunity for sort of a career navigator that should and hopefully will at some point start playing into educational maps. But the problem also is it's changing so fast. I mean, ONA, it's already sort of, looking a little bit rusty, right, Bill?
As you know, what we're doing the way we're thinking about this at JWell is there are 4 problems to be solved. There's the advice on where might be good for you, and we saw some of that actually with UPMC and others earlier. Then there's the new way of learning, and then there's the credentialing. And you had mentioned that the new digital credentials work we're doing. And so it's great to see this attention to this advice. It's a hard problem to solve. So another question here. I'm concerned that incoming community college students will have poor mathematical and computational skills or complex thinking skills because COVID impacted the high school experience. So what have you seen, or what suggestions do you have to make sure that these people come prepared or can catch up as they hit the community college?
This is a deep problem, and losing a year is it's a very painful reality. And how do we catch up on that lost time is a critical issue. But look, this remedial and developmental education is a real problem for our community colleges to handle. And typically it's done by essentially telling students, many of which, probably most of which, have remedial education needs. Frankly, all of us do. Telling them, look, get your remedial course done, and then you can take your technical courses and start thinking about your career. And too many students never get past the remedial course. They get frustrated. They don't see how its relevancy to what they want to be able to do. So that's a major cause of dropouts in community college programs. So we've looked closely at the Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology. There's 27 of those schools across the state. And they've been around for a significant period of time and have a long track record. What they've done is they have integrated the remedial work with the technical courses that lead to your skill and your career opportunity, so that you're getting right into your new skill and the new job opportunity right? You can start seeing, plenty of light at the end of the tunnel. You can see what that career possibility might be because you're taking those technical courses. But at the same time, you're getting your remedial courses built into that program. And the remedial courses are geared to your technical course so that you're solving the developmental background, mathematical skills typically. You're solving those problems in ways that are relevant to the skill that you're getting. And the TCATS program, this is not just one school, this is 27 schools across the state. They have a completion rate of 81%, right? Which many schools would die for. And they've got an 86% rate of placing their students into the field which they study, which also many schools would die for. So it's been tackled. And one of the most critical problems is that remedial developmental education hurdle. And there are places that have figured out ways around that.
Great, thank you. So as always, the time just flies in these discussions, and we're near the end of our hour. I want to leave one question up for you, Sanjay, kind of about the future. One of the things I notice when I go in and I ask you to do something for me, or I ask, I just want to catch you up on status of things, is I walk away with half a dozen ideas that I never dreamed of. But you're thinking about these kinds of things out there. So as you've been thinking about the future of open learning, the future of MIT, what's the direction for workforce learning in the world? Big question. Just a minute or two to answer it.
Yeah. George, I thought you were going to say that you walk away with your arm twisted.
That too.
Yeah. Look, I am a big believer that our education systems are very monolithic, and they're like these massive escarpments that you can't, you can't really jump up. They're so, it's like 4 years of bust, 2 years of bust, 1 year of masters of bust. And so what I'm thinking about is atomizing education into much smaller chunks, which includes the online credential, which includes a boot camp where you're working with teams, doing teamwork, right, doing a hackathon, and which includes after that doing something like an apprenticeship or an internship. And all of education can be constructed from the same set of Legos or atoms. And the beauty of this sort of thinking, if I may say so, is that now you can think of an associate's degree as, 3 of these things, and a bachelor's degree as 6, and lifelong learning as taking 1 a year, right, for the rest of your life. So we call this, and George, you and Bill have been central to this thinking, Agile Continuous Education, ACE. I think that just as we go to a gym every week, several times a week, we don't go to the gym for 4 years and declare ourselves healthy for the rest of our lives, right? I feel that this is essentially the way in which we need to reconstitute education going forward. And it combines workforce and combines higher ed. It combines, even high school could go this way.
Fantastic, thank you. I want to thank you, Sanjay, and I want to thank you, Bill, for sharing your insights from your book and the Q&A. We're going to switch over to our final session then, just to put a wrapper on the day and get ready for the next day. So Bill, if you could join me, and Farhad, if you could join me, and we'll move into that next session. Thanks again, Sanjay. Wow, it's been an amazing day. I've been taking copious notes about this, even knowing the people on the program and knowing what they're doing, you're still learning new things in hearing people talk about what they're doing. So in this session, what Bill and Farhad and I thought we'd do is just share a few impressions that each of us has from the day to today. And it'll be no way comprehensive, but certainly we can hit some of the high points. And then we'll preview what's coming up tomorrow, so you know what to expect when we're getting there. So I get to lead off, which is good, because then I get to say things and not worry about whether anybody else has said them already. There were two ideas that really rang true with me in here. One was the need for new models for the students. The idea of the incumbents, the non-traditional students, the traditional process just isn't going to work for them the same way. So we saw Terry Sandhu talking about the Fast Pass, Matt Janison talking about helping incarcerated workers in there, new ways of helping the students. And Kathy Wrench also talked about this idea of needing to wrap social and other supports around the academic learning, especially during COVID, but also for people who are just in crisis or in the lower income and they just don't have the things we would expect a student to have. So that was one idea of just the new models for students that need to be there. And with that, new models for the employers to actually create the workers they need rather than finding them. So certainly we saw that with UPMC, with Beth Israel there, where they're taking their best workers and finding them short paths to take the next step. They're giving advice on what's possible for them when these people might not think about it. And the interesting thing, I've been doing work with a master's student on the less educated workers' incentive to upskill and train. And one of the big issues there is that these people may not have had the best experience in school. And so the idea of school being good for them may not be the first place they'd look. And what's nice about this idea of the companies showing the path and helping these people move up is they're giving them more certainty that what they're learning is applicable and it's actually going to pay off for them. So this idea of new models for the students, also new models for the employers to find the right people, I found both of them just fascinating. Bill, what other ideas did you have that you were seeing?
So let me run through a few thoughts, George, that I had in listening to the panels. On the first panel with a number of community college representatives, I thought Matt Janison from Gateway Community College made an important point that, employers are looking for what they always look for, employees ready to work, but they are also starting to see at Gateway employers that understand the need for new kinds of skills in areas like advanced manufacturing, Industry 4.0, automation, robotics. The employers know they're going to have to get those skills, right? And that's increasing employer awareness and willingness to look at those programs for those. Kathy Wrench saw a growing demand for incumbent worker training at Quinsimmon Community College, where she's located. And then she noted that, almost 70% of QCC students are part-time. The degrees are too far away for many. And that this really has created a need to rethink how to really repackage the curriculum and set up a curriculum based on milestones, really what some are calling stackable credentials. And Terry Burgess Sandu from Lorain County Community College, along those lines, says they're working really hard on credentials in areas like automation and robotics and others. They've sorted out 3,500. They've gotten it down to 300, obviously a more manageable number, but still big. But really working with local industry on how to embed those credentials into courses to really help students in that kind of stackable credentials kind of approach. In the second panel, Michael Britt Crane talked a lot from the Defense Department's Mantech program that sponsors the manufacturing institutes. He talked a lot about the need to modernize the education system. Talked about a program in Alabama around virtual reality and what they're finding, and that the tool is attractive to students. It's fun for students. It's a new world for students. And it turns out to be a pretty flexible tool for training that can also be quite scalable. And when you compare, a VR set is now several $100. The price is coming down. It's actually less than that. It's coming down pretty quickly. Even AR is starting to make progress in cutting costs. These are going to be tools that are available. And as Michael points out, if they can supplement the hands-on, they could really help solve a lot of the problems that we need in teaching the kind of hands-on side by accelerating that education to really take advantage of the face-to-face education with a skilled teacher who can really do that face-to-face hands-on piece in a more accelerated and kind of way. Could be a big enhancement for education. Maria Finn from Jobs for the Future said, yeah, hybrid education with the best of digital access that's anytime, combining that hands-on, that's really a piece that we need to do. And then another thought that came out of that panel was really around Jen James's, the Undersecretary in Massachusetts for Labor, her discussion about the Workforce Skills Cabinet. How do we take these dispersed federal programs that are organized by cabinets and reaffirmed by appropriations committees in Congress and kind of locked into their separate areas? How do we bring them together? And the story of how Massachusetts attempted to bring their cabinet secretaries in economic development, education, and labor together for frequent bi-monthly meetings and their deputies meeting weekly, and then designing programs that complement each other and use each other, and then move that to a really skills planning regional effort, and then follow on programs like all day long and night long vocational high schools instead of just 9 to 3 or 8 to 3. You know, blurring the line between degrees and credentials, filling gaps where Pell Grants don't help on workforce needs. These are all programs that have come right out of that kind of combined efforts. And then Bob LePage, the moderator from Massachusetts Department of Education, I thought made an interesting point about how do we motivate people to do stuff like this, right? His point was invite people, you know, urge them to make progress, let them make the progress together, find ways to work together, and then celebrate the progress. And look, it becomes a self-sustaining system. It can keep on coming, right? And keep on delivering. I thought that was useful. For our panel 3, I'm going to leave to you because you moderated that one, but add what you need.
Yeah, well, it's always a hard act to follow, you know, Bill. So you meticulous notes and really covered everything that I could think of here. But a couple of areas that I saw, one was really came through the Q&A, which I thought was really spot on. And again, he's going back to the credentialing, and it said basically, how do we make it relevant to industries we serve? That really epitomizes, this is really the question for us. It's a challenge on the education side and a challenge for the employer side. How do we make the credentialing so they value it the same way? I thought this resonated well with me on that. From my own panel, Jessica Beakley from UPMC talked about, again, I put this in quote, the skill set of future. That's what she responded to. And I think it's a great way of capturing what is needed for the future. And the future can be programmable, right? The future is 2 years from now, the future is from 5 years from now. I think if we get used to the idea that it can't be static, it needs to move. So the skill set will vary over time, but there are some skills that are going to be long lasting. And these are the skill set that we talked a lot about it as soft skills. That doesn't matter whether you're talking to a person today about a technology or you're talking about 5 years from now, you're going to be using the same skills, the communication skills, the being able to solve problems. And so that is not going to change. So I think this idea about skill set of future was a great idea. I think one other thing that I want to mention is that, which Sanjay just mentioned, and I thought it was spot on, was atomizing the education. I love that word. I think that goes along a lot of the stuff that we're doing on the MassBridge. We're talking about modular approaches, you know, stackable credentials, digital badges, all of these things that allows us to sort of not move away from these long 4 months, 2 years, whatever the stuff takes to do, and more of what do you need, take what, you know, get the training that you need and move on. And one other thing that I wanted to mention, which I thought was, there's lots of lessons to be learned from Joanne Pokaski from the IDMC. The program that they have was fantastic. I mean, you couldn't ask for better. A pathway model for people that are coming through the door and the ability to go as far as they want, and having the support and the understanding of the system, you know, as the company and the institution there. So that resonated with me so much so that I think I'm gonna, after my panel, I sort of made a note of sort of, Joanne, I need to reach out to you and ask for some tips as to what we're gonna do, what things we need to do on the MassBridge in order to get aligned with what you're doing. So those are some of my observations during the day.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Bill, Farhad, for sharing, you know, these great insights. And I'm sure all of you in the group out there have your own insights that you've gained out of here. So, you know, bring them with you tomorrow when we're going to talk about some more sessions on what we can do here. So just to preview what we've got tomorrow is we're going to continue this concept of looking at the gap from different angles to figure out all the different perspectives and the best practices we have there. So the first session is going to be the manufacturing industry's point of view. Now, Farhad, you have deep experience in manufacturing. So of course, we put you in charge of a panel that has nothing to do with manufacturing, and thank you for handling that. Tomorrow, we're going to have a panel specifically on manufacturing with Craig McAtee, who runs the National Coalition of Advanced Technology Centers, along with people from Siemens, Rockwell, MIT, and also a small employer who's doing innovative things here. We're going to follow that up with a completely different perspective. What's it like to be a student going through this process? And so John Liu, who helps to run our manufacturing program here at MIT, has students from a variety of different angles that have come through in both manufacturing and other roles to move through the program and into good jobs from the community college work. After that, we'll have the keynote speaker, Celeste Carter, from NSF ATE program. She knows more about innovative approaches to technology training than everybody else in the room combined, and she'll share some of those examples on what they've been doing over the years and where they're going to go in the future in this new administration. We'll then follow that up with our final session, which is about really this collaboration between organizations, between schools, with the state, and with employers, how to make all that work. We all talk about collaborating. We do it at different levels. We have some panelists on there. They're going to talk about how to do it at a very high level and what we can learn from that process. So I want to thank you all for staying with us today. I hope you got a lot out of the discussions. I certainly did. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern time for more great insights on bridging this gap between education and workforce. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.